Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a chatty get ready with me. So I recently did the trans inclusive beauty tag that my friend Danny over at Scars to Stars made. And a lot of the responses in that were asking for me to talk more about my gender identity and the journey that came to understanding it. So I wanted to do a chatty get ready where I just talk about that and play with some makeup. And if you're new here, welcome. My name is Colin. I'm a non-binary Latinx scientist and lover of makeup with a special interest in indie makeup and high-end makeup. And I tend to take a pretty analytical approach to my reviews and my collection in general. And I have new videos every week, so I'd love to have you subscribe. Okay, so I'm going to just put on some makeup. I don't have anything on except for I have some brow gel in my brows. And I'm gonna use the Nearly Natural palette today. I'm not gonna really talk about the makeup that I'm using. I'll show it, but that's it. So I've really wanted this since it came out, but a friend of mine got it recently and wasn't a big fan of it. They didn't really like the formula, and they knew I liked the formula from the other stuff I have from Glaminatrix, so they did declutter it and send it to me, and I'm very grateful and really excited to try it out, especially because they were very gentle with it and it looks practically new, so I'm very excited. If you haven't seen it, it is this. It is a very beautiful neutral palette, so you've got green, kind of like mauve tones, you've got some actual neutrals here, and some cool tones here. So I'll probably try the greens because I'm a sucker for green, but I'm not gonna really talk about what I'm doing. I'm just gonna do it and talk about gender. So before I get started, I did want to clarify some terminology because I did mention this and define things in my other video, and I will have that linked, but I did want to do it again here just in case. So I am non-binary. I say that in every video. My pronouns are they, them. I consider myself trans non-binary because non-binary generally falls under the trans umbrella. So trans just means that your gender identity, the way you feel in your body, the way you present your body, all of that is different from the sex that you were assigned at birth. So I was assigned a male at birth, but I've never felt like a guy, I've never felt like a man, and so therefore I am not cisgendered because I'm not a man. So that is where those terms come from. So trans literally just means across, on the other side of. Think of like a transatlantic flight where you're flying across the Atlantic Ocean. Cis is another Latin term. It's a prefix. It just means on the side of, and it was actually coined in the early 90s to be a descriptive as the opposite. So if trans is the across from, on the other side of, then cis is on the side of. So it's just an adjective. They're just adjectives. And I see a lot of people get really mad in the comments where they're like, don't call me a cis woman, or don't call me a cis man, I'm just a man, or I'm just a woman. But they're just adjectives. Like, it's no different than calling someone a tall man, or a tall woman, or a white woman, or a blonde woman, or a brunette man. Like, it's just a descriptive term. And that's all it is. Trans means that you are a person whose sense of personal identity and gender do not correspond with their sex at birth. And cis means a person whose personal identity, and gender correspond with their sex assigned at birth. That's all that is. So the other term that I wanted to put out here at the beginning is the term queer. So I consider myself queer. It's in my name, Queer Bones. That comes because I am queer, and I am an osteologist. I study bones for a living. But queer, like, I know there's been a lot of pushback lately. I see it on Twitter a lot of people saying like, I'm not queer, don't call me that. But it's generally, like, for some people like me, it is our identity. It is the best term to describe. It works better than gay because I am non-binary. It's more encompassing. Gay generally, like, some people use gay for everybody, but gay is generally associated with gay men, more versus lesbians or anybody else. So if you're not a gay man, queer is a little bit more inclusive. And I see people act like it's this new thing, but like it's been 40 years of people using queer as an umbrella term for everybody in the community. It's been like longer than most of these people have been around. Like obviously in the early 1900s, it was started to be used as a slur and a pejorative term for gay people. But, you know, after Stonewall, after the gay rights movement started, people started using queer, like chants like "we're here, we're queer." Things like that have been around for like 40 years, 40 plus years. Queer studies as an academic subject has been around for 30 plus years. Things like Queer as Folk was a show that started in the 90s. Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, the first one, a long time ago. So it's not a new thing. And I personally feel like it is the best encompassing for like my identity, my existence. Especially when you think of it's like, the original meaning was like peculiar, odd, eccentric. That also kind of works. So I actually don't mind it. But I do know some people get very heated about it. Generally, white gay men get really heated about it though. So this is an interesting olivey green color. So my gender identity and my coming to terms with understanding that I'm non-binary started years ago. And looking back at my life, the signs were always there. I just didn't really have the words to put it in, to say what I felt. But I would say actively starting to think about it and put words to it started in like 2017, 2018. I officially came out as non-binary in 2019, right around the time I moved to Seattle for my PhD. This is a really pretty color. But it's been something that I'd been thinking about I talked to my husband and my best friend about for months before that, and I'd been like in my head anxiously thinking about things and reading for over a year before that. What kind of pushed that end thing was meeting more trans and not gender non-conforming people and having a bigger queer friend group when we lived in Brooklyn. Those few years there really helped. New York was the first place that I ever like felt like I belong and I feel at home. Even the first time I visited, it felt like that. And then actually being able to move there and live there for years, like really let me like become comfortable with myself and like understand myself, which was really important and part of why I miss it so much. Seattle has never been a place that I feel very welcome. And I can talk about that a lot in another video if you'd ever want to know. But Seattle's one of those very liberal cities that's also very white and has a very straight white view of liberalism. But that's a topic for a different video. But like looking back at my childhood, the signs that I was queer, the signs that I was probably non-binary, the signs that I was autistic were all there. But I think a lot of it got lost. Because we didn't have the terms for things that we do now. Autism, if you know much about it, was generally, unless you were like a wealthy straight white boy, it was hard to get a diagnosis and still is. And a lot of those diagnostic tests are still very focused on that demographic of like young male children. But that is also the topic for another video that I've been thinking about doing, so let me know. I really like this color. But I was always very gay. I was also very, I had a lot of issues that I think because I had a really traumatic early childhood and actually just pretty traumatic childhood throughout my teens, that I can talk about yet again in another video if you'd like. because I'm not afraid to talk about my trauma or my history. I actually find being open about it helps people a lot. Like, being open about my identities has been a way of helping other people be okay with theirs. And that's why I'm making this video, because I don't care. I'll probably get some spammy hate comments like I did in the last one. I don't care. If it puts this out there and lets someone else, help someone else be comfortable in themselves or understand themselves better, that's what I want in the world. So I was always a very flamboyant and feminine child, and I got beat up a lot for it. The first time I was gay bashed, I got started calling the F slur pretty early, like, you know, 2nd grade or something, and I didn't know what it meant, obviously. But the first time I was actually, like, physically assaulted and called names was in the 4th grade. So I don't remember how old you were there, maybe 10, I don't know. And my front teeth, like my incisors, are still chipped to this day, you know, 25 years later from that incident. So it's been a part of my life. Bullies and dealing with my identity and trying to understand my identity and why people seem to hate me has been a part of my life forever. I think a lot of the signs were just kind of hidden by the fact that I was a very flamboyant kid. They probably all thought I was going to be gay or knew I was going to be gay, and then I had a lot of trauma and abuse. So people, like, you know, were like, oh, they're weird because of this. But I remember, like, I had a lot of the stereotypical, like, young gay boy things where, like, all of my friends were girls. I liked girly things and feminine things, but also, like, it was a little different, especially now that I'm an adult and I know other queer people. It was a little different. But I remember always being, like, confused by gender and not understanding gender norms and not really feeling like any of it made sense or felt right with me. Like, I just, even as a kid, it was confusing. And then I know my mom was a good mom. I mean, I've said this before, but in case you don't know, my mom died a week after I turned 15. So she was not there when I came out for any of my coming outs, but she knew. She was also a very good mom. I mean, she had her faults like all parents, but one of the things that she definitely did was, I think she knew I was going to be gay or queer in some way, so she tried her best to expose me to queer culture. She enjoyed queer movies, like things like Tu Wong Fu and, you know, Priscilla Queen of the Desert and stuff, because she enjoyed those too. But she also, I think, put in an effort to help me see that people, like she could see it in me as a child and was like, I want you to know that these people are normal, and, like, if you end up being gay, it's okay, I will still love you. She said that the first time when I was like 8 or 9. And then I was pretty sure I was gay, but then, you know, her health declined and life got chaotic. I mean, life was chaotic before that, but it got really chaotic, so I never really got to tell her. And I came out a little bit after she died. So after she died, her cousin took me in, and I came out to them, and it was really scary. I knew it. I thought about it for months. I had come out to a couple, like, other people, or said, I think I am. There's always that, like, you're too scared to commit, so you say, I think I'm gay. And I remember I came out via email. I was like, I'm gonna go to bed. And then I sent her an email that said, I think I'm gay. And I woke up the next morning to a really sweet response, and she had already joined PFLAG, which is the Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays. She'd already, she was like, gonna commit, and I'm gonna be as supportive as I can. She was a really great guardian to have. And so I immediately joined the queer community in that way, where I went to PFLAG with her. I joined and worked with GLSEN, which is the gay, lesbian, straight education network, I think is the abbreviation. And they work with GSAs, the Gay Straight Alliances, at schools, and, just try to help with support and education. I was the president of my GSA in high school. I was also the president of the GSA at the local community college, because I took classes at the community college instead of the high school, for most of high school, because I was sick of being bullied. I was bullied a lot. I've mentioned that before, but like, I came out as gay. I was very proud of it. I was fine with it, but like, I had food thrown at me on a regular basis. I was thrown into lockers. They were small lockers, like they were double stacked. So I was never like the movie stereotype of shoved in one. I'm also a big person. I'm 6'2", and I was chubby in high school. But people would come up behind you and throw you into a wall or something and then run away. Food thrown at me, spit on, like you name it. Screamed at on a regular basis. I was just kind of used to it all. But being the president of the GSA and doing all of that, like, helped me explore myself, helped me make, friends and acquaintances who were queer, and helped me become more confident and comfortable with myself. So that was a really helpful experience. And then I went about the rest of my life. So like, as a kid, jumping back, this is going to be not in any particular order. I have some like, make sure you mention this thing notes here, but like, I'm going to be jumping around. So as a kid, like, I remember being confused by gender, and I remember when I hit puberty, everybody was like, oh, your voice is changing, you're gonna grow body hair, you're gonna become a man. And I just remember crying all the time, because nothing about men, masculine culture, men in general, like, nothing of it felt right or familiar. I didn't want to be part of that. I didn't understand it. And I just remember crying a lot. And I also knew, because my mom exposed me to queer culture and she had queer friends, I knew that trans people existed, and I didn't understand like what non-binary was, because there weren't really terms for that then, or there were but not exposed to me. And so I was like, well, I'm not a boy, I don't really feel like a man, and I don't want to be one, but I don't feel like a girl or a woman, and I don't want to be a woman either, so like, what am I? And I just kind of chalked it up to being like, this must be a gay thing, and just kind of like suppressed it for 20 years. And then, this is really pretty. I think this would be even prettier with glitter glue, but it's really pretty. And then I, went about my adult life. I met my husband right at 19, and I'm now almost 35, so we've been together for a very long time. And, slowly progressed in being comfortable with myself throughout my 20s. I mean, that's kind of what your 20s are, especially if you're queer. A lot of things that teenagers go through, we don't really get to go through, like dating and learning about ourselves in a lot of ways. So a lot of that was in our 20s. And then, we moved to New York, and we had queer friends and poly friends and just everything. And it was just a really good experience. I miss it. It still feels like home when we go back. It's just like, yep, this is like, the vibe is immediately right. And just feels like home again, in a way that no place else ever has. And I've lived all over. I've lived in California, I've lived in Portland, I've lived here twice. I've lived in Connecticut. I've visited lots of places. I've spent, a few months in France and a few months in Germany working. I do really like France and Germany, but New York is definitely home. So this looks really nice, and I don't have any fallout at all. So I'm gonna start with my face. I'm just gonna put a little bit of primer on my nose. It's the Milk makeup one. So like that, growing, like making more gay and queer friends, me making more trans friends and non-binary friends and stuff as an adult in my late 20s and early 30s in New York really helped understand myself. And I think the turning point for me was like, there was always issues where like, I didn't know why, but like I would, I didn't know what it meant or why, but like things like I would go to a conference and they would have people introduce each other, and I'd go to a party with lots of queer people and people would introduce each other with their pronouns. And again, I'll say it's not preferred pronouns. Preferred pronouns makes it seem like there's a choice. Like I would prefer if you called me this, but I'm okay with other things. And for some people that is the case, but for a lot of us, it's just our pronouns. There's a siren. But it was always hard. Like I would be supportive, and I felt like a bad trans ally because I didn't want to call myself he. I didn't want to say my pronouns were he, him. I was always like awkward and saying it, like it just never felt right. And even in my early 20s, I remember like someone would infantilize me or something, and it was really hard. Like I would want to say like I'm an adult, I'm a grown adult human, but I would try to say man and it just felt wrong and I couldn't do it, and then it would like lose the importance of saying what I was trying to say. So those signs were there my entire adult life where I was just like, this just doesn't feel right. I don't know what I'm doing. People, like if we were at a party and they were like, all the guys go stand over there, I'd be like, am I included in that? Do you want me to go stand over there too? I swear I deal with more road news living in Seattle than I ever did in New York. And so like those all should have been signs, but I was naive and really didn't really understand. So it was actually what helped me the most was in like 2018, one of my friends, I had other non-binary friends, but one of my friends recently came out as non-binary, and they now use she, her pronouns. So she was saying that, you know, it was one of those things where they were on Fire Island with a bunch of other gays and queers and hanging out, and there was, I don't know, some experiences and some like feelings of just like feelings, I can't remember specifics right now because it's been years, that they were like, well, we all feel this because we're gay, right? And almost all of the people that were like, no, I don't feel that way, or I don't experience the world in that way. And then like a couple of trans people were like, I do, that's a trans thing. And so it led them into a deep dive of their themselves and what it means and what their gender identity is. And we were having lunch catching up, and they were talking about this, and I was just sitting there thinking like, all the things that you're describing are the exact same way I feel. What does that mean? Is this what this means? And I was really scared to come out, not because there's anything wrong with it, but it just kind of felt like I was adding to the laundry list of issues that I have. Not issues, but like things that make me different, which are not inherently bad, but like when you have OCD and autism and a history of trauma, and you're queer and you're Hispanic, and people mock you for that, and sometimes my grammar is messed up because I learned Spanish as a small, like there was just like all of these things. It was like, okay, so I'm just adding another thing to the list. I have chronic pain and chronic health issues. So it was a little scary that way. But, you know, I spent a lot of time reading, talking to people, just working on myself and like, you know, self-reflection, which is something I've always done, as, you know, and I think more people need to do. And that's when I, in 2018, 2019 was when I was like, I think I am. And I told my partner and I told my best friend, and they were super supportive, and they were like, this makes sense, and I'm actually not surprised that you're saying all of this. And then in 2019, I started coming out to people, other people, like my cohort mate for my PhD. And then I posted to like Facebook and stuff and told everyone. But for me, it made the most sense as like an identification. Like I don't feel like either a man or a woman. I feel like some kind of combination of the two in a way that neither label really works. And I feel like we tend to think of the gender binary as like man here, woman here, and then there's a line. And sometimes we think non-binary people are just right here, but it's more like a big blob with them like over here. And then there's different types of non-binary identities all over. Some people are gender fluid, and they feel like depending on the day and the circumstances, they feel more like one side, one area or the other. I don't. I kind of stay right where I am. It's one of those things that you just kind of have to meet more non-binary people and trans people and talk to them and see what their experiences are like. And I will definitely try to tag people I know in the comments or in the description box that you might want to follow. That's where how the journey went. And then as far as 2019 was also when I started to learn about makeup. So makeup was one of those things that I was always really interested in. I thought it looked beautiful. I loved the way people could artistically change their face or add sparkle or make, there's all kinds of things you could do. Drag makeup and other things can be really transformative. And I thought it was beautiful and artistic and fascinating, and was always interested in it. And I remember I helped my mom with her makeup sometimes. I mean, she was pretty much just a mascara and that's it person, maybe some lip balm. And then I remember going to the store with her and always like walking by, like we'd go to like Nordstrom or something for something, or Macy's, and I was a bit like fascinated by the makeup counters. And I always wanted to go look at stuff, and sometimes I would kind of sneak a peek, but it was like, this is not allowed for you, don't even try, and I was scared. Obviously, we've made a lot of progress in the last 20 years about ideas of beauty products and makeup and gender, but this was the 90s. And so even as an adult, I would like see makeup products or follow makeup accounts and makeup artists long before I ever started using makeup, because I thought it was beautiful and artistic, but I never had the courage to, one, be like, I could do this. Also, I never thought of myself like as artistic enough to even try, and that fear of failure was there. But eventually I was like, really, like, I'm not as femme all the time as I was with a kid. I'm not as flamboyant as I was a kid. So like a lot of being in my 30s now and understanding myself is trying to reclaim the things that I hid and lost from years of abuse and bullying and stuff. So being like, I'm really intrigued by makeup, I'm gonna try it, was something I talked to my best friend about. And for Christmas that year, she bought me a bunch of stuff. And then I think COVID and the pandemic were hard. They really messed with my PhD, they messed with my mental health, my physical health. I've been dealing with long COVID for over a year now, plus, weight fluctuations from being stuck at home and getting COVID. But one benefit of it was being home alone, or like working from home, teaching classes from home, so I could like play with makeup more. I could play and wash stuff off, or I could try out something and take pictures and post it, or put on makeup before a Zoom call. And I think that ability to explore myself also really helped, especially because we were so isolated here. We didn't really have friends here until my best friend moved here, and we didn't really know anybody. So that was a really helpful experience, timing-wise. I mean, a lot of other stuff, timing-wise, that was awful. But for that purpose, it was very helpful. So Haus Labs actually just announced blushes today. I have some of the old original Haus Labs blushes and I still really like these. Really want the new ones, at least the peach one and maybe the red. And I want them to come out with the terracotta, but I probably won't buy any right now just because I don't need any blushes. And I'm trying not to spend money until I find a job and have more income. So I will not be buying much makeup for the foreseeable future. But that's when I started posting more on my Instagram and actually using it more. And that's been, and meeting people in the beauty sphere and meeting people like Steven and Danny and stuff has been really helpful and really wonderful. So I am eternally grateful for all of that. Okay, so I'm gonna go put some mascara on and I will be right back. Okay, so I put on mascara. I just can't really talk while I do it. And then I'm just gonna grab a little brush and take this brown color and run under my eyes just to kind of tie everything in. And I'm gonna add a little something to the inner corner. Okay, and I'm just adding a little bit more of my Haus Labs lip oil on. I don't feel like putting a real lip on right now. But that, yeah, so and that brings us to today. So started my YouTube channel a year and a half ago now, and that has also been really helpful in meeting people and getting to express myself, and it's been really great. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. I hope it brought you to some gave you some understanding of not just myself, but like people like me. And I am really happy to have this space where I can do stuff like this and I have this creative outlet and I can just be myself. And I mean, I'm the same when I'm on Twitter. I'm very vocally just myself, and it means a lot when people reach out and they're like, it was good, like, thank you for posting this, or thank you for being yourself, it's helped me with this. I've had students come up and be like, thank you for being my professor this term. Like, it meant a lot to have a very queer person or whatever. So having this space as another place to just be myself and be creative and do what I feel like has been really wonderful. And I'm very thankful that I have the subscribers I do and the community that I do. So I really like the way my makeup came out. I basically just did my normal base and a pretty standard eye for myself. With a less sparkly shadow, I'd probably, like a Pat McGrath, I might start with the shimmer, but for this I did not. I really like the way everything turned out. Really like my makeup today. And really liking this palette so far. So it is the same formula and quality that I expected from the Nocturnal palette and the singles that I have. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts and everything in the comments below. Try to be nice. If you're not, you'll probably get blocked or removed. But thank you so much for watching again. And remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.